Just looking at your stream title, is this video bad? You missed the part where they were talking about HRT for trans women and the fact that they didn't consult any trans women and they're using guidelines from 2016. They're fear-mongering about progesterone because they are saying it causes blood clots, but that's only for synthetic, not bioidentical, which most of the studies nowadays use. It's also saying breast growth stops after 3 years, but that's only because the studies ran for 3 years. They are claiming that you having mood swings is sexist, which is kind of weird. You're going to have changes in your mood. There's also going to be a bad part where they're saying that just go on blockers without E if you are a trans femme non-binary person, which is definitely going to ruin most of your health. I was prescribed the wrong dosage. I know what it feels like to be menopausal and have your testosterone levels nuked, so recommending that feels really off.
Now for a video that will stir up no controversy whatsoever.
Probably not the controversy you were expecting, right?
The DSM-5, basically the Bible of all things psychology diagnoses, does still categorize gender dysphoria as a mental disorder.
Gender dysphoria can cause a lot of issues, and the only way that helps has been gender affirming care. Because people can experience gender dysphoria, but they don't want to acknowledge it. That's why cis boys who have growth in breast tissue can get them removed, but trans boys can't. A cis girl can get breast augmentation with 16. Trans girls can't, because you're going to regret this. You're going to get out of this phase. Everybody regrets this. Gender affirming care is a thing. Most of the practices we have been in place for cis people all along, but they refuse to say that it's gender affirming care. The problem why we are denied those things is because we want to be seen as the opposite gender. We want to get the treatments for the opposite gender, and sadly that's what they deny us, because they still view us as mentally ill people. Can't do surgery on children who want it, only on intersex babies who will then suffer medical consequences the rest of their lives as a result. This parents wanting their child to be one or the other because they can't raise them gender neutral. And the thing is, like, what if they make the wrong decision? And then they're going to gaslight, saying that all these issues that you're having, it's just a phase.
WPATH recommends treating TGD folks based on informed consent.
In Germany, if you find a therapist who's actually educated, they're not going to force you to do what all the health insurances are telling you to do, which is you should live 1 year as the opposite gender. But what they mean is that if you are assigned male at birth and you wanna, transition, they're going to force you to enact a stereotype to judge your transness. They're basically going to be like, well, you're not wearing makeup, you're not wearing dresses everywhere you go, you're not even wearing high heels, you don't have long hair. No, you're not a woman. You're not trans enough. I'm not going to do it. Because a lot of the guidelines that we have in place in Germany are just based on research that was made by people who had an anti-trans rhetoric. I told my first therapist that I wanted to be seen as neutral. I didn't like sticking out. I don't want to wear makeup and a skirt because people are going to notice that I'm obviously trans and that's going to put me in danger. And the therapist didn't want to accept it. The therapist told me that I'm not putting enough effort into, but they were not willing to help me after a year of talking to them. It sucks that you have to rely on people who just don't give a fuck about you. I was 22. I've been having these feelings since as long as I can remember, and people just didn't want to help me. The process in the NHS sucks. You have to wait for years, and even if you go private, can't get your hormones checked. I also heard that the UK fucks up your gender affirming surgeries because they don't want you to have fun, because it's just a fetish if you do it to enjoy yourself, as if it's bad for you to look into the mirror and find yourself attractive when doing feminine things, as if that's not what's happening with cis women. Hormones should be over the top counter. They are if you're cis. The fact that you need to have gender dysphoria in order to get trans healthcare is also like a really fucked system, because if gender dysphoria is not a requirement for you to be trans, then it shouldn't be a requirement for you to get healthcare.
Feminizing hormone therapy is going to involve taking both estrogen, the hormone that influences the development of feminine secondary sex characteristics, and a medication to block the testosterone your body makes. Some people may add progesterone on top of that, but WPATH doesn't recommend doing so, and I'll get to why in a second.
This video fearmongers about progesterone, saying it causes blood clots, but that's only true for synthetic, not bioidentical, which trans women should be getting prescribed and is important to our health and well-being. More rapid feminization, decreased endogenous testosterone production, optimal breast maturation to tender stages 4, 5. Increased bone formation, progesterone and gender affirming therapy for trans women. So this is not about synthetical one. This is bioidentical progesterone. May also contribute to breast maturation. Long-term progesterone could prevent bone loss and protect cardiovascular health. Levels of certain hormones in your body go down with age. These hormones include estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Some common effects of low hormones include hot flashes, night sweat, loss of interest in sex or painful intercourse, problems sleeping, loss of energy or fatigue, weight gain, mood changes, memory loss, or confusion. Note that progesterone is in there.
Estradiol is available as a pill, patch, or injection.
It's also used as a gel.
Achieve levels comparable to what's in a cisgender woman's body, though it's still probably worth noting that we're still figuring out exactly what to shoot for.
It's also that everybody needs a different level. It's said that trans women need a little bit more estrogen than cis women, but you kind of have to experiment and find a balance that feels right for your body. Obviously, your body is going to adjust, and it's going to take a long time to actually figure that out. I wasn't comfortable with something like 80. I had to go higher. I think mine is like around 200 now, which I feel fine with. It's just trying to find the balance that works for you. You kind of have to experiment. A lot of doctors don't want you to experiment. They're just going to prescribe you a dosage, and then they're like, nope, you're fine, but you actually need a different dosage, probably a higher one, because they always undershoot.
They might take anywhere from 1 to 8 milligrams a day via pill.
I'm using gel. Gel is actually better than a pill because it doesn't have to go through your liver. Injections are not necessarily allowed here in Germany. You literally have to take gel. I just wish I had injections in like a dart form, and then someone would just flow dart me. I don't want to put a needle into my butt or something. Just shoot me with one.
Now let's talk about progesterone. There are widely circulated anecdotal claims that adding progesterone will enhance breast development, something a lot of trans women will probably find appealing. However, the clinical evidence for this actually isn't great.
These studies are based around cisgender women and the biological actions there, and we don't have a lot of studies right now for trans women who did have progesterone and those without it.
Breast tissue growth is all but certain, though it might take 2 or 3 years to get the full effect. And
this is another point that they are wrong about. It basically says the full effect, meaning that it stops afterwards. Most of the studies only ran for 3 years, and since puberty is longer than just 3 years, this is kind of misleading.
It's a myth that hormone therapy will affect your bone structure unless you start very young.
You can actually get shorter. If you're on HRT, your spine is getting readjusted. There are also some people who say that their feet got smaller by 1 or like a half size. It's a little bit misleading to say that it's a misconception when there are literally a lot of people who are like, you know, I measured myself and now after like 2 or 3 years of HRT, now I'm like 4 centimeters smaller.
Unfortunately, one thing estrogen won't do is change your voice.
Estrogen doesn't affect your voice, testosterone affects your voice. So testosterone basically does irreversible harm, and estrogen just doesn't affect your voice at all.
Hormones can also affect your mood, but we should be careful not to let our interpretation of those effects come out as plain old sexism.
Is it sexist to say that a pregnant person is going to have mood swings? Is it sexist for me to say that when I started HRT and my testosterone levels got nuked, I was feeling less angry, but I was also really emotional, and I was crying a lot, and I couldn't control myself, and I was breaking down every single hour of the day? Is it sexist to say that hormones affect your emotions? Is it sexist to say that it's a mood swing when your mood changes rapidly? I don't think that's sexist. I think saying that a person on their period, when they are fed up with your shit, are just emotional right now, that is sexist. You may feel sad, anxious, or frustrated. That's what I had when I was prescribed the wrong dosage for estrogen. But this is also like the thing if you're raising your estrogen levels, because your body has to adjust.
Now this next bit is the bit that our writer Alex actually has personal experience with. In other words, we're moving on to testosterone.
So they had nobody with personal experience on estrogen and HRT for trans women, but now they have someone with personal experience. I cannot say anything about HRT for trans men, but I guess they have the writer Alex, so this is probably going to be more accurate.
Emotional changes can happen too, but I'd like to repeat what I said before about being careful not to interpret those changes in the context of our traditional perceptions of.
An increase in testosterone is going to make you more angry. That's a biological fact. You can just be honest. You don't have to make it like, oh no, we're not trying to be sexist.
Some people report finding it more difficult to cry, but a lot of people seem to feel more centered and calm, not angrier.
The testosterone cause anger issues. There are often positive emotional changes from reduced gender dysphoria. However, in some FTMs, testosterone can cause increased irritability. Irritability. Testosterone can cause increased irritability, frustration, and anger. I feel like the fact that you're saying, oh, it's going to be harder for you to cry and you're going to be more centered and more aligned with yourself. I feel like that part is sexist because you're kind of implying that depending on testosterone instead of estrogen is going to make you more centered and less emotional.
Lower doses of hormones can result in a more gender-neutral effect. According to UCSF, people whose bodies produce mainly testosterone can use an androgen blocker without additional estrogen.
You're going to suffer from menopausal issues. You're going to be physically and emotionally exhausted. You're going to be mentally drained. Everything is going to be really difficult for you. You're not going to have any real positive changes. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I know what it feels like to be on too low testosterone and too low estrogen.
There you have it.
Also, what they didn't talk about, which I find interesting, I'm way more sensitive to cold temperatures. I sweat a lot. My nails break way easier. I'm craving bell peppers, like, constantly. I also gained a lot of weight during transitioning. I also feel like my metabolism changed a little bit. Back then, I could basically eat whatever I wanted. Now I kind of have to watch out because estrogen kind of clings on fat and it holds it really tightly. 4 or 5 kilos is to be expected. When you're on HRT, it's actually needed for you. Since I've been on estrogen, I've been thirsting over men way more. I've heard from a lot of trans women that since they've been on estrogen, they've just been wanting babies. I haven't experienced that because I don't want babies. But I guess if the writers on Scishow would hear me say that estrogen can make you simp over men and maybe make you want babies, they're going to call that sexist, right? They could have done better and it feels really rushed, and I hope they're going to correct a lot of the claims they made.